All right, we're ready to go.
Free the land, everyone. My name is Angel. Thank you all for joining us tonight for the special event that we have planned. I am with the DC chapter of MXGM, and I use they, them pronouns. We are excited to have you all join us in the Zoom room and on Facebook Live. I'm an organizer. Oh, like I said before, yes. I'm an organizer with the DC chapter of the Malcolm X Grassroots movement. We dedicate this film screening and discussion to our beloved Nahanda Ezoki Abidon, a new African revolutionary, NAPO founder, former freedom fighter living in exile, now ancestor. You will hear Nahanda's voice throughout the film. So, who is MXGM? The Malcolm X Grassroots movement is an organization of Africans in America, new Africans, whose mission is to defend the human rights of our people and promote self-determination in our community. We understand that the collective institutions of white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism have been at the root of our people's oppression. We understand that without community control and without the power to determine our own lives, we will continue to fall victim to genocide. Therefore, we seek to heighten our consciousness about self-determination and national independence as a human right and a solution to our colonization. While organizing around our principles of unity, we are building a network of Black new African organizers committed to the protracted struggle for the liberation of the new African nation by any means necessary. This is who we are, and I'm going to kick it off to Jomo to talk to us about why we are gathering tonight.
All right, free the land, everyone. I'm the one who is doing the tech and can't do my own tech. So I am excited to talk to us a little bit about who Dr. Mutulu Shakur is, the campaign that we're doing, that we're waging as part of the week of action that this event is a part of. And for those who are unfamiliar with who Dr. Mutulu Shakur is, Dr. Mutulu Shakur is a father, grandfather, healer, political activist, human rights organizer, and currently being held by the Federal Bureau of Prisons for over 35 years. He's been denied parole 9 times and denied compassionate release twice. His health is deteriorating, and we must mount a campaign to build the people's power to really call on the Biden administration to immediately commute the sentence of Dr. Mutulu Shakur. And that's our first demand of the campaign, is to free Mutulu now. Our second demand in the campaign is clemency for all, clemency for Mutulu and all of those held under federal old law prison sentence. We demand that President Biden grant collective clemency to and immediately release Dr. Mutulu Shakur and fellow political prisoners. There are 4 other political prisoners who share the same legal status as Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who've exhausted been denied parole many times, and clemency and commutation is the only way that we believe that they'll be freed. And those include Veronza Bowers, Leonard Peltier, Kojo Bamani, Oso Blanco, Bill Dunn, and there are about 200 other people who are not political prisoners who are also held under old law statutes. Many of them are, like Dr. Mutulu Shakur, have been in prison for 30 years, have been denied parole many times and pose no danger. Most of them are aged and dying, and we believe that they should be freed as well. And then our third campaign demand is to free them all, and that we demand the release of activists who have been imprisoned because of their commitment to seeking human rights and the liberation of our people. We know them as political prisoners and prisoners of war, and they should be recognized as such. And to do this, we call on the new African Black nation to support the campaign and build the grassroots, the Malcolm X Grassroots movement. We believe that it's only through organization that we'll build the people's power to free Mutulu and free them all. So for the week of action that started this Monday on Black Solidarity Day, and that will be carrying out the week. Different chapters and cities in the campaign will be doing several actions, but we kicked it off Monday with the Black Solidarity Rally at 7:35, where we heard from friends and family and fighters from Mutulu on who Mutulu is, why he must be free now, and what we can do. We'll share the link to the replay to watch it again, so you can see. Also, we had messages from Nkechi Taifa, the people's attorney, fresh off the Spirit of Mandela International Tribunal, where the U.S. was found guilty of 5 counts of human rights abuses, including the imprisonment of political activists and political prisoners. We're also asking folks to try to endorse the campaign, either as an organization and as an individual. So we want you to go to the Biddle link, Free Mutulu, to endorse the campaign. Agree to be helping to build what we're calling a Shakur squad. That's 3 or more folks who really want to help organize Free Mutulu and free political prisoners. We've started this kind of Flipgrid video endorsement process, where you can go in and make a 1-minute video on why you believe Dr. Mutulu Shakur should be free. And when you go back to look at the Black Solidarity video, you'll see the Youth for Mutulu and our first flip video. And you can see it's a really exciting and fun way to make a serious political statement. The next thing we want you to do is just keep in touch and keep connected with the campaign. So visit the MXG webpage, Free to Land, mxg.org/Free Mutulu now for campaign updates and updates on the week of action. The 4th action that we want everyone to take is to sign and share the petition, again, calling for the release of Dr. Mutulu Shakur, and you can do that at campaigns for organizing for. And then the last one, not the last one, but the second to last one, is we want you, and most probably really important, is to write Dr. Mutulu Shakur and write others. Again, he might not be able to respond to that, but again, he's under suffering and trying to move through stage 3 bone cancer. And so every letter is just an offer of resilience, an offer of healing to help keep Doc well and help bring about his healing. So continue to write Dr. Mutulu Shakur. And then the last thing we want folks to do is to donate to the campaign. And again, we're looking at, we're doing a campaign in 35 cities and 35 actions for the 35 years that Dr. Mutulu Shakur has been held. And we encouraging folks to make donations in multiples of 35. So whether that's 35 cents, $3.50, $35, however you can get at it, however much you can give, it'll be appreciated and used to further our fight for Dr. Mutulu Shakur. So I think that is it. And I'm supposed to turn it over to my comrade, April.
Good land, y'all. My name is April, she, her. In addition to being a chapter member of MXGM here in DC, I'm also a core organizer with Black Lives Matter DC, which is a member-based abolitionist organization centering the Black people most at risk for state violence in DC, creating the conditions for Black liberation through the abolition of systems and institutions of white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, and colonialism. We're dedicated to promoting strategies that empower the most oppressed Black people, do not reinforce or legitimize systems and institutions that harm Black people, including the police, prisons, mass incarceration, and modern-day slavery. Divest from people, institutions, and systems that harm us, and invest in the people, institutions, systems, and other models that support our liberation and empowerment. Use a diversity of tactics to promote harm reduction, political education, and non-cooperation as strategic visions. So as you also know, today is the 42nd anniversary of the liberation of former Black Panther and Black Liberation Army member, Assata Shakur. Our comrade Assata was liberated from Clinton Correctional Facility for Women, maximum security prison in New Jersey on November 2nd, 1979. On May 2nd, 1973, while driving the New Jersey Turnpike, Assata and her comrades were ambushed by the New Jersey State Troopers. The shootout resulted in the death of Shakur's comrade, Zayed Shakur, and New Jersey State Trooper Werner Foster. Forensic evidence demonstrated that Shakur, who was also shot and injured in the shootout, had a shattered clavicle and damaged nerve in her right hand. Shakur's injuries indicated that her hands were raised over her head when she was shot by police. Her fingerprints were also never found on any guns at the scene or with any gun residue on her hands. Nevertheless, she was convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to life plus 33 years in prison for aiding and abetting in the murder of her comrade, Zayed Shakur, and Trooper Forrester. Sundiata Acoli, who was later captured, was also charged with both deaths. We know that Assata was a target of J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI's COINTEL program, who designated the Black Panther Party the greatest threat to the internal security of the country and moved with the force to neutralize them and the Black liberation struggle. After serving 6 years, Assata was liberated on this day 42 years ago. It's always important in these times to remember the history and make connections to today. And we see these same things happening. So learning from and giving honor to Sister Assata, when we are seeing some of the same things today, is also very important. So thank you.
So really quickly, we wanted to kind of read some of Assata's words. So Jomo with the tech. So in 1977, I was convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to life plus 33 years in prison. In 1979, fearing that I would be murdered in prison and knowing that I would never receive any justice, I was liberated from prison, aided by committed comrades who understood the depths of the injustices in my case, and who were also extremely fearful for my life. So as Jomo said, we were doing this as part of the Dr. Mutulu Shakur Week of Action. So Dr. Mutulu Shakur and Baba Sekou Odinga, who is free today, were charged for allegedly leading the operation to free Assata. The Jericho movement proclaimed November 2nd as a National Assata Shakur Liberation Day in 2013 as a response to the FBI's designation of Assata as a terrorist. First woman on the top 10 most wanted list, an increase of her bounty from $1 million to $2 million, showing the government's total disrespect and disregard for Cuba's sovereign international right to have granted her political asylum. So we celebrate Assata Shakur Liberation Day, and we continue to call for the freedom of all political prisoners, prisoners of war, and for the organizing to create the conditions of our comrades in exile to be able to come home. So we say, what's the call? Free them all. So we're really excited. We're going to have a quick conversation and invite folks, if y'all have questions, to just send them to us. I love to see Assata free. Seeing her walk, laugh, be in community, hear her talk about love, about life, about struggle, about being human and choosing to be human. So I'm excited to moderate this conversation. My name is Maria. I use she, her pronouns. I'm part of the DC chapter of the Malcolm X Grassroots movement. And it's really an honor to be part of this conversation today. We're going to hear from Mama Chinganji Akinyela, a founding member of the New African People's Organization and Malcolm X Grassroots movement, a dear comrade and of our beloved ancestor Nahanda Obiodun and of Assata Shakur. And we're also going to hear from our comrades April and Angel from the DC chapter and Black Lives Matter DC. So we want to invite you all to get on camera so we can see y'all and be part of this conversation. And I think Jomo doing the tech. Perfect. So I'm really excited. There was so much in that film, so much that we hear and read from Assata. So we're gonna do just a round of intros. So if you could introduce yourselves, your name, your pronoun, and anything else you want us to know about you. And then share what was your introduction to Assata, or who was your introduction to Assata? What brought you to her? And anyone can go.
Hey, Frida Land, y'all. I'm Chinganji Akinyela. I use she and her. I'm excited. I'm excited about this. I'm really glad that I did review the film before we saw it again, because I forgot that my sister, my comrade, who is more a sister to me sometimes than in many ways, was narrating it. So I was glad to hear Nahanda Biadoun's voice narrating over it. And then I had to flashback of the reminders of when that film was being made. I was honored to meet Assata Shakur, firstly through her book, the autobiography. And then when the New African Peoples Organization, of which I am a founding member, endorsed the book, I was honored to be invited to come to Cuba to do an interview with Assata about the book. An honor. And while there, I also reunited with Sister Nahanda Biadoun, who had been granted political exile in Cuba as well. And our little ragtag team, I like to call it, put together this video. We didn't have the resources or anything for, like ABC, CNN, or MSNBC. We had a little handheld camera. We developed over, a few days, the questions that we wanted to ask and to address. And we put it together. It's not the best quality, but once we decided what the audience was, who we wanted to get this to, those people who had read the book and had questions, those people who were striving to be political activists, those women who needed to know what other women were doing in this movement, it was kind of like easy peasy for us. So we spent like 10 to 12 days, because at that time it was not easy getting to Cuba. I actually left my 2-year-old child at home to do this, not really knowing how long I was going to be gone. But we had to spend the first few days just to figure out what we wanted to do, who we wanted to address, what were the questions, and how we were going to do it. And so that's what we did. And it was just like this fabulous, fabulous project where I got to know Sister Assata as a human being, a real live heroine. Her book tells it all. I think the movie tells a lot about the humanity of being a freedom fighter. I mean, Nahanda and Assata are like the warrior women, eyes of the rainbow, as they said. And I think about them as the real life, Dora Milaje, those are the warriors. They're the ones, they're the ones, and they're the ones we need to aspire to be like, to learn who they are, to recognize that, as many of my mentors have told me over the years, that what we bring to the movement is us. We bring ourselves. And in our strongest self, that's what we have to contribute to organizing ourselves for Black liberation. You muted, Maria. You're saying something.
I was just like, thank you so much. Yes. And if y'all have not seen this interview, it is one of my favorites. It's like a hidden gem. And it is on YouTube. So we're going to find it and put it in the link. It's, I think, about 45 minutes long, and y'all just cover everything. And I think that's just so incredible. So we're gonna find it and put it in the chat for folks. It's such an incredible interview. Angel or April, what brought you to Assata? What was your introduction?
Hey everyone, I'm Angel. I'm with the MXGM DC chapter, and I use they them pronouns. And what brought me to Assata was I was actually researching Afeni Shakur. My brother was a huge Tupac fan, and so I wanted to learn more about the family. And so then I found out about Dr. Mutulu Shakur and his involvement, and I found Assata Shakur's name. I was like, "Ooh, okay, sounds interesting." So I went to Sankofa about 2 years ago, and I picked up her book, the autobiography, and I literally just finished it last summer. And it changed my life for sure. So many tears were shed while reading the book, so many revelations, just so much inspiration came from that book. And I feel like it came at a really good time in my life because I felt just a little confused as to like what to do in regards to getting involved in the movement. And, I've heard about, freedom fighters being in exile and being political prisoners and prisoners of war. And I was thinking to myself, like, how do they continue like their resilience? Like, what keeps them going? And just learning about Assata and how powerful she is and how she continued to press on and how her love for the people helped her to continue to struggle and move on was really inspiring, because I feel like because of capitalism, unfortunately, we've been so indoctrinated to be individualists that we kind of lost, it feels like we've lost like that love for the people, like the genuine love for the people. And I feel like we don't have to struggle for people. What am I trying to say? So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it doesn't have to be a transactional. Like I can struggle for someone and not expect anything in return. And nowadays, I feel like that's kind of what's missing from like my generation as a millennial. So like I said, just reading her autobiography, learning more about her has been very helpful and very inspiring as well.
Thank you so much. April, I am she, her. I am part of the Grassroots, MXGM DC, and also Black Lives Matter DC. I will say that I'm one of those people, I've been organizing for a long time, so let me say that. But when BLM came about, I've noticed that there was a chant that folks say a lot. I'm not one to just, I don't know if you want to say regurgitate, but I'm not one to just say something because it works in the moment, and had only seen, maybe pictures or, I got a feeling when looking at pictures and people, no one ever actually talked about the woman. They mostly just would say Assata, and there'd be other stories about other things and other people. But for me, in actually reading and looking far past any kind of, cheer or chant, was the realization of me having to ask myself almost daily, how far, like, what am I willing to do? What am I signing up for? And what sacrifices am I willing to make? And can I do that in a principled way? So what are the principles that are behind that? So that day, it's kind of like a check-in. Yes, because, I can be hot-headed or whatever. Is this something that is going to benefit everybody, or is it going to make me feel better right now? But definitely, as someone who's dealt with a lot of surveillance and things like that, you do, it's real. And so for me, it's a reminder of liberation work being a way of life, and not a fad, not something you do when you're younger, but really believing that in the times that we are at our lowest, whatever that is, right? Because it's different for all of us. Can we stand? How much do we stand in what is behind that? And do we accept that this is part of what comes as, there's a reason we call it the struggle. But it's a constant check-in. It's a hard check-in. It's a head check-in that just said, yeah, it's hard. No one said it was easy, and it's not supposed to be, right? So I would say that was kind of, just hearing and seeing, but wanting to know more. So yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what a range. Wow, I didn't realize we had such a range of when folks met Assata. I was in high school when I started organizing in New York City, and it was a must read. You had to, like you had to read Assata, and you had to read Malcolm. That was kind of our indoctrination into this work, because we had to understand like what was going on and why the things. Mama Chinganji, you talked a little bit about it, and let me know if you want to elaborate more, but just curious about what is the significance of Assata Shakur in the liberation of Black people right now? Well, what was her significance? What is her significance, particularly as folks who are New African.
Her significance is tremendous. And I want to kind of just go back to a little bit what you said, Maria, that to me, the autobiography of Malcolm X and Assata are the two must reads. I think they both bring the humanity to our struggle and the importance of our struggle. One of the things that I remember in our interview, our video, that Assata said to me, I asked her, I said, aren't you afraid? Didn't you fear for your life? And she said to me, you know, I'm more afraid about what will happen if I don't struggle than what will happen if I do. And that was the most, as a budding revolutionary, as one who was trying to still learn and still learning, you know, what we need to do for our movement, I can contribute to this movement, to understand that, as I think April said, that it's not easy, you know, it's not an easy journey. You know, a lot of the things that we sacrifice for this movement, they're not easy sacrifice. You know, we might rather do something else at a different time or some time, but Assata made the ultimate sacrifice. And she talked a lot to me about, you know, over the years, about how challenging it is to not have, you know, as she mentioned in the film, to not have her family. You know, she had a daughter, you know, and she did have, at one period, she did have her daughter there in Cuba with her. I don't remember how long. I think it was maybe 2 years that she was able to, that she stayed there. But being in Cuba while being in exile, she wasn't free. And so her daughter was trying to live in a culture that wasn't hers. You know, true enough, they made friends, they made people who were like family. You know, they spoke fluent Spanish, which was wonderful, because when I got there, I didn't speak any Spanish. And so I was able to kind of like hang out with them to get, you know, for them to translate, but it wasn't home, you know. So one of my responsibilities was to bring the flavor from home to them, because they talked about how they couldn't just walk down the block, you know, them New York girls, you know, walking down the block and feeling the flavor, you know, and Cuba was not their flavor. They had become used to it. But so I had to take the new dances, the new slang, you know, what was going on at home to them, because they were not home, you know. So they had made a sacrifice to be for our movement, you know, to continue on that work. And so they took on that work in Cuba. You know, they could have, Cuba, as she mentioned, it's a beautiful, beautiful island, you know, gorgeous beaches, you know, you could go there and just relax, but that was not what they were there for, you know. So they took any opportunity they had to talk about, you know, the Black liberation movement, political prisoners, prisoners of war, what our movement needed, the international support that was being required. What could we do for the international organizations that were represented? Because Cuba is like this huge international, it's a small island, but it's one of those big places that people go to for political support. So they were able to actually interact, you know, with a lot of different countries, a lot of different movements while in Cuba. Medical students from all over the world started coming there. So they were able to really do things with the interaction and building international support for our movement. And they saw that as the important part of their work. They saw that as what they needed to do for, say, Odinga, for Mutulu Shakur, for Sundiata Acoli, you know, and did that on a regular basis, you know. So that's one of the things that most impacted me, learning that, you know, this sister from New York, you know, they had the roots in South Carolina, you know, she wanted to know how to do the electric slide, but she also wanted to know what she had to do for the movement. So.
I just love that. Because there's sometimes, like, we talk about Assata as this like other robot being, right? And not actually about the human and her wholeness, right? So she was a Black revolutionary, right? She was New African womanist, right? She was a warrior, and she was a poet, and she was a mom, right? She talked a lot about her mom, her grandma, right? So there was just so much about Assata that I feel like we lose because we aren't able to continue to be with her. some of the themes that I think that stand out for me in the film, particularly that really resonate with me, is around her anti-imperialist position, right? So she was like, listen, we have to understand the conditions of Black people, of New Africans in the empire, right? And we also have to be able to relate that to international struggles for liberation. And that she was an anti-capitalist, right? So these kinds of things in her writing. And I think, April, you talked about the we have nothing to lose but our change, right? Like this her words that became now a chant. But that was the ending of a letter that she sent to us while she was in jail, right? And that letter was an indictment of the US government, right? Like it was an indictment of the crimes and the genocide of the US government. So what were some of the things that stood out for y'all, or some of the themes in the film that you're like, actually, I want to be able to touch on this because this particular thing felt really important? And then I have some follow-up questions around kind of the conditions of our people now.
I just feel like there's so much. It was very rich. I mean, from just watching, I mean, there's something to be said about someone who is in that part of the struggle, or have been through that many, phases of the struggle. Something about the acceptance of conditions, as far as your life and where you are, and still being able to like connect the beauty around you to the people, to what still needs to be done, what we need to remember. So it's kind of the same thing I already said, but seeing it is very different. I hadn't seen this film before this event, so since you started putting on this event, but you wonder, like, what does that look like? I remember thinking the same thing when I met Babu Dingo, and was like, what is to listen, and what is, we have numbers of years and conditions in our head, but having not been there, what does that look like? Can you still go through that and be a whole person? And someone who is still doing the work, like no matter where you are still committed in doing that. So just all the way through, no matter what was talked about, it was a theme, from the streams of family words and dreams to being in a place that was the other side of that dream, right? So yeah.
I wanted to add something also, that I had the opportunity to meet the filmmaker, Gloria Rolando, and before the film was made, and then when she came to the States to do a tour with the film. It's kind of a funny story because she didn't speak much English, and of course my Spanish is like that, but we were trying to connect. We had been back and forth, communicating, and the New African People's Organization and Malcolm X Grassroots Movement were going to sponsor a showing of the film. But I wanted to get together with her, kind of, show her around and, take her out, feed her, bring her to the house, whatever. Okay, so we were trying to communicate as to where she was, and we just couldn't get it. She had no idea where she was. Turned out she's like 2 blocks over from me, and so we finally got together. She was actually with a, I can't remember the professor's name, but a professor at Clark Atlanta that was hosting her. So anyway, so she's like 2 blocks over from me, and we eventually got together. But what I wanted to say about that is that she is one of the people that became like a sister to Assata there. They forged this real wonderful bond, and then the film came. So it's like it kind of came out of that sisterhood bond. And so she was able to create this persona of Assata, because sometimes Assata would not necessarily want people to see the vulnerabilities of her. And she felt that people didn't want to see it. They wanted to only see, hardcore freedom fighter. And Gloria was able to bring that humanity in the film. And it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful. And I think that that's one of the important things that I'm left with in that film, her humanity, her not having her family, her having to build new family. And one of the family members was Gloria Rolando.
I feel like I want all the inside stories. Angel, you were gonna jump in?
Yes. One thing that came up for me while we were watching the film was when Assata said, you know, if we're not taking ourselves seriously, if we're not taking the struggle seriously, then when we are in front of our ancestors, we have to hang our heads. And whew, that was deep. That was really deep for sure. It just reminded me of like, there's like these t-shirts where people are like, where it says like, I'm not my ancestors, or like, it says like my ancestors' wildest dreams. And it also reminded me of this meme where someone's like, oh, I'm having a panic attack in the middle of the grocery store. And my ancestors are like, who fought off lines and stuff, are just like watching me, like shaking their heads. And yeah, it really, like April was saying, like doing the self check-ins, like what am I willing to sacrifice? Do I really know like the severity that comes with being in the movement, being in the struggle? And then I think about, well, my ancestors also made a lot of sacrifices to get me to where I am now. And it's only like the best way I can honor them is to also struggle for a more better sustainable world and a better life for my future descendants and our lineage. So I really felt touched by that part. And also when she was speaking about her grandmother pretty much being like an environmentalist, I was like, oh, that's so true. Like, I think now, especially with how we're seeing climate change, is just like, it's serious. And I think the UN just released a report saying that we have like, I think 7 or 8 years to get it together before we start to see like the real catastrophe of climate change. So to know that also like descendants of Africans and African people, we are so connected to the earth that we must also include struggling for a better environment and struggling for, you know, to end climate change is also vital to our survival and our future like lineage and descendants.
Yeah, we were joking in the chat that she was a new African environmentalist. No, for real. I mean, I think I think there's just so much, right? Because I think we what is it? Compartmentalize struggle into these different things, and it's like this issue, this issue, this issue. Well, actually, no, it's about the liberation of our people, of all of our people, right? So what does it mean to struggle and have analysis that breaks the silos of our work, for sure? And then, you know, what does it mean to be vulnerable in this work, right? What does it mean for people to see our wholeness and be willing to put all of ourselves on the line for this vision of this world? Because what else can we do? It's almost as if we don't have a choice, which is, I think, part of what Assata talks about. April and Angel, I want to go deeper into kind of the conditions. Assata talks about the jail conditions, the kind of not vestiges of slavery, but the adjustments that slavery has made, right? And these institutions, mass incarceration, policing, right? And we often talk about police as an occupation, like an occupying force in our communities. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what's the conditions of Black folks, and then specifically here in DC?
So right before this started, I saw a newspaper story about how they are moving 400 folks from DC jail to Pennsylvania, not because we tried to sue them twice and have all of these people come, but because the Proud Boys were like, nah. And so they're just moving the folks. And I said, okay, it's still, you know, in your mind, you know, it still happens, right? That there's still a different way in which Black folks, white folks, are treated in the same system. It's the same as sharecroppers, and sharecroppers may have worked next to us, white sharecroppers, but if we were enslaved, we wouldn't get any money. They were paying off a debt, right? Then they could become the overseer, could be, you know, so it was never the same. And then I also look at some of the the things that we've had to, and I hate, kind of normalize in this moment to be able to keep going. So I look, that we've had just 16 people shot and 5 people killed by the police this year, right? And 3 of them have been in the last 2 months. And I'm just like, where is everybody? And then me and a friend were talking, I was like, we're also at 188 homicides, like, so that people get, and then there's COVID, and then kids going to school and coming back, that we have to choose between humanity, ours and others, for survival. And that sometimes that is an entire people thing, right? And how our duty in that moment is kind of the same, right? We've got to be able to keep with what our commitments are, even when the conditions change, right? So while we already know all the ways in which these things impact us as Black folks, right? But we also know that anything that happens to the rest of the world just makes that more significant. And so now you've got like 5 things, and they keep happening. And the rest of the people who are not directly impacted are trying to figure out why it's getting worse. Well, it's getting worse because it's been 2 years now with 90% of the people being Black whose businesses never opened back up, right? 70% of Black-owned businesses didn't open back up. Our kids can't, our kids' parents are now going to jail and to court for their kids not coming to school, but they're not sending kids to school because only some are staying home and some have to go in, and people have, compromised immune systems. So not only this has created a way for them to modify the way in which they dole out their oppression, right? That these conditions, there's a way that we kind of forget in that moment that they're the same thing, and not consciously, but we have to adjust. It takes a minute, right? Because they keep us so disorganized with all of these things that to be able to make this is all of us at the same time, and all of these issues are part of the same bigger system, then you have, yes, 188 homicides because our people want more police, because we don't trust each other to keep each other safe. So now there's more police, which means for almost proportionately, the more police, the more brutality, the more people getting killed. And there's on and on, that some people are fighting to save us, some people are using the systems that kill us to save us. And these conditions, and I think about, these things haven't, in listening to Assata talk about the conditions in prison, they're the same and will always be the same because they are doing exactly what they were created to do.
I don't know if you wanted to add or.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like April covered all the bases. Yeah, I feel like it's easier for folks to point the finger at the individuals, like in regards to like the gun violence and the homicides that's going on in DC, instead of actually looking at the environment and the systems that are allowing this to continue to happen. I mean, it's just ridiculous that that DC has like all these new luxury apartments and condos, and yet you have literal like houseless encampments across the street from the Capitol, although they spent millions of dollars to like put up fencing to protect the Capitol. But like I said, you look right across the street and there are houseless people. The majority of them are Black. Now it's like, I think someone said they've made having tents illegal. So it's like, how do you expect people to survive? Like, people have no other option. These jobs, they're not protecting us. It's clearly profit over people. So it's like people have their backs up against the walls. People are desperate to meet their material conditions and their material needs. I also worry about like the parents who, they can't take time off from work to send their kid to be at home with their kids. A lot of them don't have internet access. A lot of them don't have computers. They don't have laptops. So, and then like if you send your child to school, you're potentially putting them at risk for contracting COVID and bringing that back home. So it's a lot. It's a lot that's going on. And I feel like, you know, like April said, there are people who would rather work with the system than trust in the community and other Black folks and work together and figure out how can we come together to build a better, sustainable, healthier community rather than constantly relying on the state, because the state just wants to continue to fill all these, you know, prison cells and jail cells with as many like Black people as they can. So I feel like COVID has definitely exacerbated like the issues that's going on in DC in regards to the Black folks. And then it's also, we have to deal with gentrification that's going on. And it just seems like so many things are happening, but they're all interconnected, like once you get to the root of it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, you know, we're hearing about the hundreds of thousands of folks who have died under COVID, and you can't help but think about who actually are those people. And when people say like essential workers are like, who are the essential workers, right? Who are the folks, right? That have to sacrifice their lives to be able to protect whatever sense of humanity we have left. So I think absolutely. I want to pivot, Mama Chinganji, if you could, to the piece around political prisoners. So this conversation is situated in the week of action to free Baba Mutulu Shakur. And Assata was very clear. She leaves us with a call to action that we must free our freedom fighters, our political prisoners and prisoners of war, and that we have to organize to create the conditions for our freedom fighters who are living in exile to come back. So what should we do or must we do to free Dr. Mutulu Shakur?
I think that's an easy answer, not easily done. But there has to be a call for massive action, all out massive action, going out, talking to everyone you know about Mutulu. When you have an opportunity to talk to people about Dr. Mutulu Shakur, and you talk about him as being this health worker, acupuncturist, and the work that he did at Leak and Detox and setting up Bana and all these things that he did to get people off drugs. And then I hear him in my ear saying, Chinganji, you just got to go to the streets. You just got to go to the streets, because that's his thing. You know, take it to the street. You got to take it to, because the more that you talk to people about who Dr. Shakur is, the more they understand that what this country is doing to try to inhibit our people, the people who speak to us, the people who are working for our freedom fighters, you know, and that everyone here, everyone that's listening, everyone that you meet has the spirit of a freedom fighter inside them. We just got to, and that's another thing I hear him in my ear say, you just got to talk to him. You just got to talk to him, you know? So I think that that's what I would want to leave people with. I hear, you know, Assata saw that as a work. She could not go after being liberated and offered exile in Cuba. She couldn't go there and just relax. So every international audience that she had to bring up freedom, political prisoners and prisoners of war. The one interesting thing about Cuba being a socialist country is that they had this understanding of the US that, like everything, you know, they knew that there was oppression, but they did not understand the national liberation struggle of New Africans, you know, and so that was some of the work that Assata did and Nahanda did, raising up the question, you know, of New African liberation, of the Black Belt, of the things that we were talking about that are different than what, you know, progressive Europeans or white people from the States were talking about. So that was their work there. And that was connected to doing the work around political prisoners and prisoners of war.
That's right. That's right. I think that's such a critical point for sure. The work, because Assata hasn't stopped organizing, hasn't stopped fighting, hasn't stopped struggling for the liberation of our people at all whatsoever. We have two more questions and I'm gonna combine them together because we're running a little bit behind, but who is Assata calling us to be? And then if you could deliver a message, if the rainbow goes and extends to where she is, what would be your message to Assata? So who is she calling us to be? And
my message to Assata is that the struggle continues and that she is still welcome here. And when I say here, I mean among the people.
As April and Hel are thinking, I think Assata is calling us to be all of ourselves in this movement, and to question what are we willing to give, and what are we willing to take. I think she's calling us to be anti-capitalists and anti-imperialists. And because of the work that she's done in Cuba, is calling us to have a global perspective around our liberation struggle, and that we have a responsibility as Black folks in the belly of the beast in the empire to wage struggle for the sake of our liberation and for the liberation of all people across the world. So that is who Assata is calling me to be. And my message would be that I am listening. And I will forever be grateful for how much she has poured into us, whether she knows my name or not, how much she has poured into me.
Yeah, I feel as though Assata is calling on me to be the warrior version of myself, you know, to step into my power and figure out in what ways it is that I can assist and aid in the struggle for liberation. Also to study and apply the theories and ideologies that I'm studying into praxis, as well as allowing myself and my beliefs to expand and grow and evolve with the times. I also feel as though she's asking me as well, like you said, Maria, to develop an internationalist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist ideology and stay true to that, regardless of how, you know, tempting it may be to be like, you know what, I don't know about this. I think I'm just do like a, you know, little 9 to 5, collect my coin and worry about me and my family. Like, no, it's bigger than me. And there are people who are, I want to say, counting on me to join them in the struggle to liberate all Africans and new Africans on the continent and in diaspora. And a message I would have for Assata is also that I'm listening as well, and that she's welcome here.
Yeah, I think in this moment, calling me to be the person who can push past internal obstacles, internal personal obstacles, while being in this fight, to and some of the overwhelm that comes with it, to be decisive and clear, and surround myself with people who desire to do the same moving forward. Yeah, so I'm calling me to say this again as part of this. It's growing, and it's the kind of growth that we actually need, because it's growing past and out of things that no longer serve us.
Thank y'all so much for being in conversation. It feels like I need like 3 more days of conversation and digging. So thank y'all so much, Mama Chinganji, Angel, April, for being in conversation, for taking the time to talk about Assata and explore who Assata is, who she is to us, and what is she calling us to be. In particularly now in this fight to free Dr. Mutulu Shakur and to free all political prisoners and prisoners of war. So I am so thankful and grateful for you all for joining us. We have kind of one more thing that we wanted to read before we turn it over to more our calls to action. So Jomo, are you going to Put up the slide. So we are clear that we have to do the work. If we love Assata, then we have to fight and free those who freed and loved Assata as well. And that includes Dr. Mutulu Shakur, but there's also an active campaign to free Sundiata Acoli. And we have a poem, we're gonna read really quickly a poem that Assata wrote for Sundiata as part of our commitment again to free political prisoners. So here we go. Poem for Sundiata. I remember your smile, bright as the sun's explosion, wide as the arms of Yemaya, deep as the gushing well of kindness. I remember your smile. Slow like the dawn of recognition, quick like the wit of observation, clear as the logic of common sense. I remember your smile. Frank as the simple declaration, bold like the taste of naked love, wasn't no grinning, no smirking or sneering. I remember your smile. Even when you were young, you had an old smile, deep wrinkled, spread across your brow like worn parts, crossing familiar ground, laugh lines descending from eyes made old by deadly images. Laughter holding back the tears. I remember your smile. Your smile is like an umbilical cord pulling me back, pulling us back to a lost continent of brown velvet faces with white incandescent teeth, radiating home, radiating peace, radiating love. Your smile wakes me up from nightmares, turned into date mares, reoccurring slave mares in the twisted tinsel hell they call America. When they came back, they took my baby. When the milk in my breast turned to sour curd, when there was no one there to hold me, and the voices that too tired to console me sounded like empty words, I remember your smile. Wrote off our lives with rims of paper stained with filthy, greedy lies, turned us into prison statistics using legalese linguistics, regurgitating hypocritical diatribes like thin white vomit. In the midst of body bags, of tote bags, and the flood of Black blood, in the midst of affirmative negation and mass extermination, I remember your smile. We remember your smile. We call on your smile. We call on your smile to give us light. They've been trying to take your smile, wipe it off your face, like they be wiping off us off this earth, but you smiled and smile in cages, institutionalized outrages, 20-year hits like the spit, and in the spite of bitter taste in your mouth, your smile shines strong. All of us smile lovers need to set you free. We need to free your smile, that X-ray smile, beaming rays of smile, of freedom, unchain that smile, set it free. We love your smile, we need your smile. Your smile is sweet enough to melt hard hearts into love syrup, sweet and sticky as the nectar of freedom. We got to free that smile, unchain that smile. Let it shine out and warm us. I want to see that smile, make children laugh and light up a woman's eyes at midnight. We got to free that smile. We got to free that smile, that freedom smile, so that we all can smile again. So we wanted to just bring Assata, who's a poet and who told us that we have a commitment. And that commitment is to continue to struggle in the liberation of Black people, of New Africans here in the US and across the world, that we have to be a fight and a commitment to free our political prisoners, to free our prisoners of war, and to organize and create the conditions to bring our political exiles, our freedom fighters living in exile home. So thank y'all so much for being part of this conversation. I'm gonna kick it to Jomo again, who's gonna give us really quickly what's our next steps? What is our call to action? This is a week of action. Take it away, Jomo.
All right, what's the call? Free them all. One, I just want to thank y'all. That was a beautiful conversation just to witness and to be part of. So thank y'all. And Maria's already laid out what it is that we need to do or why we need to do it. And here's what we need to do. One, we need to, as Mama Chinganji said, we need to get out in the streets and start talking about Mutulu, talking about who he is, why he needs to be free. And one of the ways that we're asking folks to do that is to endorse the Free Mutulu Now campaign as an organization and as an individual, or as both. Our second call to action is we're doing Flipgrid kind of 1-minute videos saying why Dr. Mutulu Shakur should be free. We encourage you all to take a minute and to make a Flipgrid video using your voice to, again, join the many voices of calling for the release of Dr. Mutulu Shakur. The third thing that we are asking folks to do is to sign the clemency petition demanding President Biden free Dr. Mutulu Shakur and share that with 10 other of your friends. Let's use the Black Panther Party 10, 10, 10. The fourth thing that we wanted asking folks to do is to write Dr. Mutulu Shakur. Again, Doc may not be able to write you back, but he does receive all of our messages and it helps go towards his healing and letting him know that he is not forgotten and that there's still a fight and that we're building a mass movement to free him, and tell him Jomo sent you. And the last thing that we want you to do is to make a donation in a multiple of 35 for the 35 years that Doc has been held. Again, we're trying to raise resources, build people power to really mount an effort, a grassroots effort to free Dr. Mutulu Shakur and to free all political prisoners. Once we free Mutulu, like we've seen our family with Russell Maroon Schultz, we're going to turn and start to free another. So we are in solidarity with the Sundiata campaign as well, and all campaigns to free all political prisoners. So that is what we're up to. And I think I pass it to Moose.
Hey, Free the Land family. Moose, I use they, them, he, him pronouns. And just want to echo just the appreciation, just the rich learning, both from just watching that video now for the second or third time, but also just the commentary and people's reflections. Yeah, I'm just feeling real agitated, real challenged in ways that are important. So just want to lift all of you all up for your different contributions. And thanks to Jomo for highlighting again, the ongoing efforts that we are undergoing with a lot of our allies and comrades to free not only Mutulu Shakur, but all political prisoners. I'm here to tell you all about MXGM. As was mentioned before, the defense of African people amidst the American empire is one of the key principles of the Malcolm X grassroots movement. MXGM, since its founding, has been putting these sort of principles into action across our now 9 chapters, one of which is in DC, and focusing on a number of different campaigns, ranging from, how do we build alternative solidarity economies that are not rooted in exploitation? How do we build opportunities for us to participate in democracy in ways that are building sort of dual structures? How do we defend ourselves? Thinking about how do we support and build up our youth? And most importantly, how do we free the land? And so this is an invitation to join us, to join our chapter. We're always looking to continue to build a team, whether folks are with the capacity to be organizers or just want to sort of support. So what I'm gonna do, unless Jomo has done it, no, okay, good. I'm gonna drop the application in here for folks who might be interested in joining, as well as the email address to which folks should feel free to send those. And we will be in touch, and we will, try to make these sort of connections to continue to build out this movement, because as Assata is imploring upon us, we gotta continue to build, we gotta continue to fight. And we want to be able to do that and struggle with you all and struggle against empire. So thanks again to all those who joined. We are going to close this out with some words of poetry from Assata. So I'll pass it over to Jomo to facilitate that.
carry it on. Carry on the tradition. There were Black people since the childhood of time who carried it on. In Ghana, in Mali, and Timbuktu, we carried it on. We carried on the tradition. We hid in the bush when the slave masters came, holding spear, and when the moment was ripe, leaped out and lanced the lifeblood of our would-be captors. We carried it on. On slave ships, hurling ourselves into oceans, we slit the throats of our captors. We took their whips and their ships. Blood flowed in the Atlantic, and it wasn't all ours. We carried it on. Fed Missy arsenic apple pies, stole axes from the shed, went and chopped off master's head. We ran, we fought, we organized a railroad and underground. We carried it on. In newspapers and meetings and arguments and street fights, we carried it on. In tales told to children, in chants and cantantas, in poems and blues songs and saxophone screams, we carried it on. On soapboxes and picket lines, welfare lines, unemployment lines, our lives on the line, we carried it on. In sit-ins and pray-ins and march-ins and die-ins, we carried it on. On cold Missouri nights, pitting shotguns against lynch mobs. On burning Baltimore streets, pitting rocks against rifles, we carried it on. Against water hoses and bulldogs, against nightsticks and bullets, against tanks and tear gas, needles and nooses, bombs and birth control, we carried it on. In Selma and San Juan, Mozambique and Mississippi, in Brazil and in Boston, we carried it on. Through the lies and the sellouts, the mistakes and the madness, through the pain and hunger and frustration, we carried it on. Carried on the tradition, carried on a strong tradition, a proud tradition, carried a Black tradition, carry it on and pass it down to the children, pass it down, carry it on now, carry it on to freedom.
Yes, that is it. Carry it on. Thank you so much for everybody that joined us.